Because what's up? Welcome back to another podcast. And today we have an independent researcher from Delhi, a YouTuber, and someone who wants to bring about the change in the way education is in its current state. It's the one and only Chaitanya Sharma from Rev Ed India. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, man. Excited to be here.
Yup, so today we'll be discussing a lot about psychology, education, intelligence, etc. So without any further ado, let's begin. So here's the thing I do in the podcast. I let the guests introduce themselves because whenever I try to do it, I end up missing some key points. So for the audience, introduce yourself.
Hi, guys. I'm Chaitanya Sharma. You can call me Chai. I'm an independent researcher based out of Delhi, and I got into research because I really want to do something with the education system. And the reason why I want to do something with the education system is because I genuinely believe that the education system we have currently, it's jack shit, and
Mhm.
it's impeding the growth of the youth of our country, right? I'm really excited about the new education policy because they have really changed a lot of things that were not working in the old policy. So I think the future is looking really bright when it comes to what's going to happen for the future of our country with regards to education. But again, I think it's very required for the youth to get involved within the industry so that we can actually further the research, we can further the right knowledge when it comes to really ensuring
Mhm.
that the growth of the youth happens, right? So that's what my core agenda and core dream was. How I got into research is very funny. I just straight up decided to become a researcher because that's what it takes. Because the point is that if you want to follow a traditional path in terms of research, you have to get your masters, you have to get an MS,
Mhm.
and then you have to be affiliated with a university, or you can just start your own firm, credit everything to the firm. You won't ever get a doctorate, but you'll still be making a lot of progress, and time is of the essence. So that's how I got started.
All right. So here's how we actually met, right? So we were in the same Discord server at the same time. We were talking about some topic which I can't really recall right now. And he turned out to be the admin of the server and the head of a cult. And we had a chat and it ended up with me inviting him on the podcast. All right. But still, right? So how has your research firm been in the lockdown? Like what has changed in your game?
Dude, I'll be very real with you. I can't even call it a research firm anymore. It's that bad. Because the point is that you can't conduct research without a controlled environment, and the controlled environment was supposed to be in the premises of different schools. So, like in February, we were signing a lot of MOUs in Delhi, and then we were supposed to be conducting research trials in the first quarter of schools, which is April and
Mm-hmm.
May. Like, so between April and May, we had a lot of progress that we had to make so that, like we'll have a POC by now. So, like, we'll have a working concept and a working model that okay, like this is what we know, this is the data, what can we do to skew this data, what are the things that we can like really find, because what we're trying to research in and the topic of our research is learning efficiency and can it be improved, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the entire progress that we were supposed to have, or rather I should say how I planned the entire year, well, to tell you the truth, the progress that we had planned and what we had really like envisioned for this year is completely fucked because of COVID-19. The only good thing that did happen is that since I'm a smart dude, I was able to adapt, right? And I do have a working YouTube channel now where I'm posting a lot of really amazing content, and I'm really making progress with that because the content is really amazing and whatnot. But yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
the only good thing that's happened. But again, if I look back in time, I didn't want to be a YouTuber in 2020. The core agenda
Mm-hmm.
was to make progress with the research because that's exactly what's going to be the game changer for the thing that I want to do in the future, right? So
So tell me more about the research you were planning to do this year.
let's call it research we were planning to do this year, because looking at the current landscape of the education system and how things are going to progress, I genuinely don't think the schools are going to open anytime soon,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we had in mind was we'll basically conduct a proof of concept when it comes to learning, right? So we're going to do data testing on how quickly an individual reads something, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is the working memory with regards to what they've read, and how long does this working memory and what they've read stays in their brain. And like the testing was supposed to happen on the basis of 3 days, 5-day period, and a 7-day period, just to like get an analysis of how much memory and how much they're able to retain because of whatever they're learning, because the primary learning method that's being inculcated in the current system is to like read,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yep.
that was a primary POC concept. Like, so we get a lot of data on what the accurate measure and an accurate bell curve reading for a lot of schools is. It's like, so like we'll get an average reading speed and average rate of retention, right? And once we have those data points,
Mm-hmm.
we can actually go out and deliver the service we've built to try and influence those data points, and if
All
we
right.
can influence those data points. So that's exactly what our POC was. But is it going to be implemented this year, and do we still have a shot at, like getting schools open and going out to do it? I'm not really sure, man, because again, like the principals that
Mm-hmm.
were my warm leads, they've also told me the exact same thing. Dude, the point is that if you want to come out and do it, you'll have to come by yourself. And the point
Yep.
is that it's very
Makes
difficult to
sense.
explain it to parents that,
Mm-hmm.
like a new person that we don't know is coming, and he might be a, like a COVID carrier or whatever, right? So it's too many s- contingencies that just can't be met anymore. So
Makes sense. All right. I'm
yeah.
sort of a noob to research as well, right? So how subjective is research to the prospect?
What do you mean?
You know, how wide can the results of a research? How can the results of the research vary?
See, again, it depends on the kind of research you're doing and the kind of statistical analysis that you're trying to represent. The point is, when you're doing something independently, you
Mm-hmm.
have to you have to consult a lot of individuals. For example, the person that I'm consulting right now is from Gautam Buddha University, right? She is one of the consultants with Rev Ed that we have, and she is guiding us with the entire process and whatnot. So the point is that for us to even consult them and bring them on board with the analysis portion, we needed data.
Yep.
So like we're basically in a very, like that's exactly why I started with should I even call this a research firm phrase, because like we basically haven't even laid the foundation yet, because what we were supposed to do just can't be done right now.
Agreed. Agreed. Cool. So like that was almost like his introduction, right? We'll move on to the next section, which is almost like the agenda of today's topic, which is basics of psychology and whatnot. So starting with the first thing, which I'm really curious about, what is your opinion on reality?
What's my opinion on reality?
What's reality according to you?
That's a very open-ended question, dude.
Exactly.
That's all right. To give you some perspective on what reality is, I think it's more or less an illusion that is enclosed with an individual's perception.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people try to break or alter that perception, and most people don't even acknowledge that perception is there, to be precise. Most
All right.
people don't see the harsh truths in the world. Most people don't even try to bother them with the, like this thing that you're talking about as reality. So yeah, it
All
is
right.
what it is.
Do you think reality is like vary from person to person?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because the point is, there are too many variables when it comes to um, like assessing this perceptual thought, right? Because reality again is a very abstract idea that you and I are discussing, and
Yep.
since it's an open-ended discussion, everyone
Mm-hmm.
will come up with their own explanation of reality, and everyone will come up with their own agenda of what they think reality is. And there might be some similarities. For
Mm-hmm.
example, like we'll all agree that we live on planet Earth. We'll
Yep.
all agree that like we live in a certain country. If you're talking to the same person from the same country, we'll also probably agree on a lot of unsaid, like natural rules that like you're whatever. So yeah,
Got
so
it.
there are things that there are going to be similarities in all the different explanations for reality. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Cool. So can something for example, something is false, right? And a lot of people just there's a mass movement which says that it's true. So can that transform into reality, which is actually not true?
100%, man. 100%. And that's exactly what, right? So one of the biggest subjective questions is what decides what's right,
Mm-hmm.
right? If there are 100 people in a room, and imagine only 100 people are there in that particular room, right? If 99 people agree on something, it's most likely to be regarded as right in that perceptional reality of that room.
Agreed.
The logic, if what they're talking about is right or not, is not imposed and is not going to be present in that conversation, since everybody already agrees.
All
So
right.
So like for example, let me talk about something that's really controversial, but it's
Mm-hmm.
going to give you that exact idea that like you and I are trying to discuss. So we know the terrorists that are trying to terrorize the world are wrong,
Yep.
right? But we are the majority and they're the minority. To them, they're right and we are wrong and we are the tyrants. So whose reality would you like pick up and see that like is right and wrong and whatnot? Because this is again a very philosophical question, right? If they were in majority and we were the minority, right,
Mm-hmm.
they'd all just build that narrative that like we are right and you are wrong, and then we will call them the tyrants and we'll be the terrorists.
Agreed.
So it's one of those things, right, that like it's a wazi woozy, man. It's one of those things that I really say very frequently. It's a wazi woozy because like when I say wazi woozy, that means the conversation is going to go in circles.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
I feel is like a person while picking a reality, or like not even picking, he doesn't know there's a separate reality available, right? It's almost dependent on his surroundings and his upbringing, and how he has been shaped from his childhood, probably what are his implicit memories and stuff. And after that he might form an opinion and choose his reality, as you said, right? Because of terrorists, and there I'm sure there are some people who agree to the second opinion, which is of the minorities, that people support terrorists, and that's almost just because of their environment. So how did there's this thing called identity, right? What's your take on it? Is there an individual identity for a specific person, or is it just hoax?
Okay, I think there are individual identities, but a lot of people don't associate and don't try to build their own individual identity, and they try to associate with the group. And the problem starts where like the group identity demands a group outcome, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where like the things they start going against the world nature. For example, like there's this undeniable truth out there that there's this thing called natural selection. It happens, it's there, it's cutthroat survival of the fittest, right? Natural selection. But individuals, they, when they're put in natural selection, right, there's a clear
Mm-hmm.
hierarchy on the basis of like multiple things, such as performance, such as genes, such as like the competence of an individual, and so on and so forth. But in modern civilization, what's happened is a lot of individuals, instead of looking at their own individuality and instead of building their own individuality, they try to identify as a certain group. For example,
Mm-hmm.
um like let's talk about religion. That's one group identity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
All
talk
right.
about caste. That's one group identity. Let's talk about a certain school. That's one group identity. So a lot of the times what happens is, instead of just someone telling you who they are, they're also going to tell you that like I'm from a certain school, I'm from a certain place, I'm from a certain like I'm a certain alumni or alma mater of a certain college or whatever, and like
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. So all those things are like I think a byproduct of civilization. But yeah, again, it's the good sides and the bad sides, so we can't really decide what's good and bad because again it's very perceptional.
But don't you think it's very influenced by the surroundings, right? Because let's say I am surrounded with a bunch of drug addicts. That means after a while, even I can become a drug addict because there are a lot of drug addicts around me. And I feel like most of the cliches are right, because like what's that quote, that a rotten apple might ruin all of them in the basket, something like that. I don't remember,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I get it.
it's
one
almost like.
one
Mhm.
bad fish can ruin the entire pond. You are the average of the five closest people around you, all that stuff, dude. 100%. If you are hanging out with 10 thieves, you're going to be the 11th.
Agreed, right? And there are a lot of positive to it, because this one example is very common, which is if you want to build a body, just surround yourself with bodybuilders. That's why institutions were invented, right? That's why people like to have a community based learning, because everybody will sort of have the same end goal, that is to learn something common, which might actually help them progress in a way. That's why gyms are so popular, because they can see people around them and probably get influenced. That probably gets the bad sides as well, but most probably that's why they had the institutionalization, if that's a word. Cool.
Dude, 100%. I think I agree with you on that, but I'll tell you what, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
institution, when they were started out, and the concept of institution when it was started out, right? It was really about bringing meritocracy together so that they can innovate and they can thrive and they can take the mankind forward, right? Then that same concept was copied and it wasn't implemented with success or the level of quality, right? That's why so even in my admin debate, like Varun was asking how, like what is your argument for college and what is your argument against a college. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a part of that debate, but towards the end Prakhar asked, okay, like, is there someone that wants to say something? And I straight up said that, dude, I want to say something, and I'll say this very clearly. There are great institutions out there, and those great institutions are great because they have a certain quality control. Most
Mm-hmm.
people are just trying to replicate those models. They're not doing a very good job of replicating those models, and that's exactly why the entire college structure and this institutional structure that's, like, been there for centuries is falling apart, because people are not taking the job seriously, and they aren't doing a good job at replicating what's, like, the successful colleges and institutions are doing. And Varun was like, okay, Chaitanya, you are selected, get out. And that was very fun. That was really funny, dude. Like, I
Yeah.
actually, dude, I got selected first. I'll tell you what, okay, my biggest sad story was
Mm-hmm.
I was there to dominate, but then I never got a chance to dominate because I missed out all on the good stuff. I missed on the battle, I missed on the rap battle, I missed on the, like, you have to pretend to be Gary V and all that stuff in the admin contest. I was really
Yeah.
mad about it. And, like, again, like, Varun has a very straight way of, like, choosing and like picking people that he likes, right? So he's like, okay, Chaitanya, I made my decision. You are going to be an admin. Now get out.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
like,
dude,
how has
it's
been
funny.
like you guys have started a cult as well, like RIM. Like, tell me something about it because there are a lot of people who are interested in joining RIM. Because I've seen a lot of people ask you that in the server.
I
Just
know,
clear it
man.
out on this podcast today.
Okay, I'm really happy that, like, I am the leader of this cult and I'm the individual that started this cult. But I'll give you very okay. I'm really proud to call myself the leader of this cult that you are talking about, right? But I genuinely don't like to call it a cult, and I don't even like to call it a clan in Avalon, because to me, RIM is more of an abstract idea that I came up with. RIM stands for revolutionaries in making. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
very solid foundational idea that individuals that strive to be better consistently, that want to be at the top, and also want to carry people with them, and
Mm-hmm.
want to add amazing value to Avalon, can be a member of RIM. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you can speak in fluent English or not. You've got to have the jobs, and you've got to have that, like, that you have to be out there helping people, because when you're there, right, you're
Mm-hmm.
really helping people, and you're really trying to be that person that's, like, really adding value. You can't fake that. You
Agree.
can't fake merit, right? So RIM is like a meritocracy.
Agree.
And the reason why it's working right now, and the reason why we have a lot of respect, and, like, people want to join us, is because, like, I'm an advocate of meritocracy. I'm out there helping people all the time, and I think everyone from RIM is, like, just following suit. So we are really, like, able to make big things happen. And to, like, give you a really encouraging moment as well. So before Varun went in
Mm-hmm.
his hibernation for 10 days, right, he like wrote a Instagram post saying that, like, he's going to, like, do something big.
Yep.
And I wrote in his comment, rim up to big things as well, captain, right? And he replied to my comment saying, Avalon army is going to be a beast. It's growing in size, and it's going to be a beast in the future. And I'm really happy that
Mm-hmm.
the future of Avalon is in safe hands. So that was really encouraging as well, that, like, whatever I'm doing with RIM, whatever I'm doing in Avalon, whatever I'm doing in general is, like I've got the job. So yeah, like, it's very encouraging in general.
Agree, right? And it's almost like a power of community, right? Because there's so many smart people coming in, and when a lot of smart people come in inside, a tiny space or like under a same roof, great things can happen. Like, little late because I've seen a lot of smart people there. Let's say, the previous admin debate that was so great. I guess Manasva, Lolit, and one more dude, I forgot his name. They won it, but like literally,
Chirag.
yeah, Chirag, exactly. So those people literally have that impeccable amount of potential. And literally, if there was no Avalon, I'm sure you guys wouldn't have met. I'm 100% sure.
Yeah, 100%, man. And like, I'll spill the beans here, okay, so
Cool.
that you can use it. Dude, I because I was already an admin, no, and I had already gone through the entire process. I had calculated every variable, and I coached them to precisions. That's why, like, Rim was borderline just dominating. They're all amazing, and they can dominate pretty much anyone, but they also have a very strong leader at their side, just like ensuring that they're just maxed out.
Agreed, agreed. Like, what's next for him? What's happening?
So we are working on something huge. We are working on something. I can't talk about it because it's going to be coming out in the coming week. We are collaborating with Saad on something. And
This podcast will come like 2 weeks later, so no problem. You can spill the beans here.
oh, okay. So I'm not sure if this is, see again, like the point is, I just don't know if it's 100% confirmed. So announcing it here and 2 weeks later, if it didn't happen, it's going to look bad on me. So that's why. But yeah, dude, like the entire point with like Rim in
Mm-hmm.
Avalon is that we are here to keep Avalon the way it is, and also thrive Avalon for all the value that it adds to us, so that we are just like adding value back. For example, I'm really inspired by Varun. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the only reason I came to Avalon and I'm dedicating my time to Avalon, like the all the time that I do give here, is for the simple reason that I genuinely believe in the dude. Like I think he's cut out for some amazing things. I resonate with a lot of things he says. I have a like a very straightforward mental connection that I like genuinely think he's one of those people that if I was having a conversation with him, I'm going to be at home. I'm going to be completely comfortable because he's just there, right?
Agreed.
So the entire idea of like, so this is exactly what happens in meritocracy, right? So when you are someone that really just has a different mind and different way to see things, you wouldn't want to hang out with most people out there because most people out there aren't concerned with the same concerns you have,
Yep.
right?
People
At
don't
a very
match the wavelength, right? And it's almost like if you consider Hitler's book, right? So he has written that when you want the masses, approach the masters and not the PhDs, because those are less in number.
exactly, dude. Because the point is, even from a really young age, right? I always had this exact same ambition that I'm going to do something in the education sector and I'm really going to try and, like go out and do it. Everyone around me now, they don't ridicule me because they
Mm-hmm.
know that, like I'm making progress and whatnot in whatever little way I am trying. But initially, everybody was just borderline ridiculing, right?
Agreed.
And it's not even that they're trying to ridicule me, they're trying to just like validate their own concerns, but like we're not, it's okay. So their entire agenda in their own head was, it's okay for us to be not ambitious because if we can ridicule this guy to not be ambitious, it'll be fine, right? So that's exactly what happens everywhere. So like when I
Mm-hmm.
heard Varun's story and when I like saw Varun, I was like, oh dude, finally someone that I can genuinely relate to, and like he's also in the same field and I really like how he thinks and whatnot. So I was like, all right, I'm going to like give Avalon a shot. I came here, and like my early
Mm-hmm.
impression of Avalon wasn't as great because like the community on Telegram, what happened there was it was just straight up,
People
like
used to
people,
fake there. I'm sure.
dude, it's not about faking, Yash. I'll tell you what happened. So in
Mm-hmm.
Telegram, no, most people knew most people. So there was like, like, so if 20 people know each other, they're only going to talk to 20 like only the group of 20 are going to talk. So whenever I tried to, like jump in a conversation, I wasn't really welcomed. Like I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't welcomed at all in Telegram. But that completely changed on Discord because see, again, when you know your shit, when you know exactly what you're saying, when you know the answer to someone's question because you have, like really thought about it, right? You get attention. So
Mm-hmm.
when I came to Discord and when I was hanging out in voice chill chat, right? People were asking questions and I was just giving them, like my thought process because I've really sat down by myself, thought about a lot of things, read a lot of books. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really clear with all the facts and I talk about conclusive things and not non-conclusive things, and I like don't try to give generic advice to people. So
Yep.
that resonated with a lot of people like instantaneously. So like when I came on Avalon Discord, I was like, okay dude, this dude is nice, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
So like that really helped.
Agreed. Agreed. And you spoke about education a lot, right? Because I want to ask you this, because you stepped into the education system in a way. Like, what has been the worst experience while you were at school or probably in college that probably has led you here because you want to change it?
I'll tell you what, right? So in school, I'm one of those kids that were okay. See again, like when I say this, a lot of people are going to just borderline judge me, but trust me, I did not perform well in school because it was just borderline uninteresting. When you're
Agreed.
smart, when you have this, when you come from a specific gene code, right? Like, let's talk about pure fluid intelligence here. When you know what's happening, right? um you understand that this is not relevant to you, and it's also being taught in a way that's completely not engaging at all, right? And
Hmm.
I was also a very rebellious child. So, like, add rebelliousness to you finding something uninteresting completely, it's a very huge disaster,
Yep.
right? So, like, I was straight up. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be a musician. I didn't like school because I was in a tier three school, right? I wasn't in the best of schools, and most people in my school did not really like me.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
yeah, like my school was like really bad, and like why they did not like me, because like I'm just a pretty boy, and like a pretty boy with a guitar is like a sure shot way of getting hated by most people, because Justin Bieber, Dude Boy, and all that stuff,
Hmm.
insane.
All right.
Dude,
So
it won't it I won't even say that it was bad. It was bad to a point where most people just borderline. Dude, I've been beaten by 10, 15 groups of people,
oh, like
like individuals in 10, 15. They would come and chase me, and they would hunt me down, and like I'd be running around in school just, and on what grounds? Because like this girl is trying to talk to me, and some other guy has like dibs on her.
why
So,
does this happen? Like,
dude, I don't understand why does this happen, man. Like, what are you talking about? If I could understand, I'd be like, just like straight up, I'll be like a big fat fuck you to all those things, man. Like, my school life was really traumatic, man. Like, it was genuinely traumatic, because I was just like really weirded out, and like really not in the place where I'm supposed to be.
all
And it
right,
is
all
what
right.
it is. And like the only good thing along those times, like, was that my parents understood that, like, whatever I'm going through, I'm like legit going through it, and it's not my fault. It's the system that's bad. So they were not as, like like they wouldn't scold me, or they wouldn't, like belittle me that, like you are not doing well or whatever, because
Mhm. Do you
they
think
understood.
the NEP would change this in any way? Like the behavioral aspect, like the curriculum might change, but do you think how will it affect the behavior of the children?
I genuinely, okay, see, it might over the course of 10 to 15 years change how kids think about education in general, because the current scene of state of affairs is, and one of the driving factors of why people don't like the idea of learning is, when it comes to learning, right? They have to
Hmm.
learn a new language, and then they have to start learning,
Yep. Yep.
right? So that's the cycle that's trying to be, like the government is trying to break. So, like, by inculcating learning in the early years in the same language that, like, you speak in your own home, what they're trying to do is, the kid won't have to learn a new language to learn. That's not going to impede learning, and the process of learning is going to be a little more streamlined in the early years. And if it's streamlined in the early years, and the idea of education can be, like, made fun in the early years, it's going to translate to, like, lifelong learning potential, or lifelong learning curiosity when they, like, when the kids come of age. Because the biggest problem right now is most people just don't want to educate themselves. I'm
Hmm.
not talking about schooling and degrees. I'm actually talking about educating themselves. I You'll be surprised by how many people don't want to educate themselves beyond, like, getting a degree or schooling. They just don't
Hmm.
want to. Now again, like, when you look at it from, like, now there's black and white in that statement as well.
Yep.
Maybe they're just not cut out for that kind of education, and maybe they are cut out and they're just procrastinating. And like, those are two different school of thoughts that just, like, take you to garbage conversations either way. So yeah.
Agreed, but like, don't you think that learning English is the least of the problems that any school going kid has to face? Well, see, dude, like there are many other difficult subjects. Don't you think changing the curriculum is a better idea than shifting to a local language? Because I know there are many migrant students coming in, and they won't know some language. For example, I live in Maharashtra, and I have so many Gujarati friends. They won't understand Marathi if that's been taught since nursery or something.
See, I get your point, but the point is that, okay, so the early on learning that I'm talking about, English will be introduced at class fifth, I think, in the new education policy, right? So before
Mm-hmm.
that, I think the local language will be, like, insisted upon, and I think that's fine, dude. Because the point is that it's very easy for you to acquire languages at a later stage as well. Like, language is not a problem. The problem is the medium. right?
Hmm.
And using a new language as the medium then becomes a very difficult thing. I mean, imagine you have to cross the river, you are in a tank, okay? Will you just take your tank and just cross the river because you can, or you're going to build a wooden bridge that may break because you are on a tank?
That might just be for the people who are in the hometown, right? Because they know that language. But the people who are like migrating for jobs, and I'm sure there's so many. For them, I guess there might be an option, right? They will put an option like having English as the primary language initially, and then might be
Dude,
another section for that.
most of the migration that does happen, I actually read my fact because I was in a very heated argument in Avalon. I think
Hmm.
around 81% was the number that the migration is within the state. So 81% of all the migration that happens, it's within the state.
81%. But dude, like the next 19%, how do you think they would survive?
Again, like a very fair point, but the point is, do you create something that's holistic in nature, or do you cater every person? Because if you try to cater every person, democracy is not going to function, right? Because you can't include everyone when it comes to just building a policy from the ground up. How we're going to execute the policy, how we're going to make the changes, because we're facing
Mhm.
logistical issues and technical issues, is later to adapt. But the policy has to say something, the framework has to say something, right?
Okay, great. So, there's this new argument running up on Twitter about self-help coaches, right? What's your take on it? The current reign of the self-help coaches in India, because it's almost like the time for introspection for most of the people. What do you
Dude,
feel?
I'll tell you what, okay, I think it's hilarious. I genuinely think it's hilarious. Half the people
Yes.
that are half the people that are arguing against self-help coach, they don't understand jack shit about self-help coaching, and half the people that are arguing for self-help coach, they're not self-help coach themselves, and they're probably listening to their like chacha ke mame ka beta that's like trying to be a self-help coach because he can speak two bars in English, and like he has read like Think and Grow Rich and As a Man Thinketh, and he can like now influence your subconscious mind because of NLP practices that he doesn't understand jack shit about.
Agreed, agreed. Like it's almost like bro science, right? Most of the time. And if you ever check see, it depends on coach to coach, right? If you check the coaches who are at the top right now, like not all of them, some of them are really good, but some of them are just providing borderline bullshit. I'll not take names, but literally surface level shit, which most of the people know. See, I'll give a statement here. You may, agree or disagree or just correct me there. See, what I feel is people just want validation for their existent knowledge and not new forms of it. What do you feel?
You're on the money with it, Yash. I'm genuinely impressed by you. Like the kind of
Hmm.
conversations you're able to have and the kind of clarity that you have at the age of 15. It's really impressive, man. Yeah, you're on the money with it. A lot of people are just seeking validation. They don't have jack shit to add. They don't introspect. They don't know what they're talking about. They're probably using other people's ideas as their own to just like get that leverage going and get that thought process going. And it is what it is. You can again like put this in a framework that what if they don't have the necessary like intelligence to even come up with something unique or original. I will also argue that like most people don't even want to try, so
Hmm.
it's one of those things that's just
Because people
there.
have tried. If you, I'm sure you know about Prakhar as you spoke a few minutes ago. Because Prakhar provides like really complex content. That's why people
It's not
just
too complex, to be honest.
like for the people who are watching the current self-help coach. That's for these guys. Like it's almost like way too complex for the people
No,
who are
dude,
watching.
Prakhar, whatever he's saying, it's very straightforward, very
Hmm.
straightforward to the T. He's not even using very complex metaphors, right? He just like spits bars, spits facts. Like a lot of it is philosophical and a lot of it is
Hmm.
open to interpretation,
Agreed,
but it's
agreed.
very easy to consume. So I don't think it's any complex idea. It's just like he's saying things as it is, and like he has a very good following that he's able to build and nurture because
I
like
believe
he's
he
saying
has
things for
almost like a
whatever it
cult,
is
right?
he's
He
saying.
almost has like a cult right now at this moment, like a very dedicated amount of following, which is probably as intelligent as him. I don't know, dude, because see, because I was watching the self-help coach earlier, and when I shifted to Prakar, I found that relatively complex. And even Varun has said this to him that you need to simplify your content down, because if you literally check the amount of knowledge he's providing, he is not getting the amount of support he deserves at this moment.
You also need to consider the fact that he just started out, right, and it's a very saturated space, so all those things, they make a huge difference. But again, dude, I've heard. See, I haven't watched every video, so I can't definitively say that his like his content is not complex, because if you're so insistive on it being complex, it might just be a possibility. But from whatever I've watched, I don't find it complex at all. I think it's very straightforward.
It's probably matching your wavelength, right? That's why probably, because see, if you consider people who are at the top right now, the amount of content they provided, it's just like they provide the headline of the entire article, and they don't look at the article at all. They don't even look at the, what's that, control articles and stuff. It's almost it. I'm doing a comparison which is almost unfair, but yeah, we'll just not talk about it anymore. Cool. So, I want to ask you this thing. What's your take on personality? How does a personality develop? And, let's say, and when does it develop? For most importantly.
See, most people say that your personality is set in stone by the age of 5. There's some truth to that, and there's some like research that justifies those things, because like what happens in your early brain, like it does solidify a lot of things. But I genuinely think your personality alters every 4 to 5 years, man. Like it genuinely alters, because your brain is all constantly forming new synaptic connections, and all those things make a huge difference. The accuracy of you taking a personality test, however, for example, there are two really famous ones that you can get a test for free online, that are going to give you like really accurate results,
Mm-hmm.
like somewhat accurate results at least. Is Myers-Briggs, and the other one is Big Five, right?
All right.
So Myers-Briggs divides your personality on like Myers-Briggs basically, it calculates 4 different parameters, right? And there's a possibility of 2 parameter in each parameter. So there's basically a combination of 16 personalities that are formed as the result of it. So E stands for like, so the 4 letters are E versus I. The first one is extroversion versus introversion,
Mm-hmm.
right? The second one is intuitive versus dude. I'll have to check the S one, because I'm not a S person, so I don't really know what it means.
Cool,
But
cool.
yeah, dude, like, and the N versus T, which is wait, F versus T, which is feeling versus thinking, and then P versus J, which is perceiving versus judging. So there's a distinctive difference when you lie on the scale and you're looking at these 4 variables, right? So if
All
you
right.
understand how things work, it gives you a lot of clarity. For example, let's talk about extroversion and introversion. Is pretty straightforward,
Yep,
and it's
yep.
very easy to explain as well. So
Mm-hmm.
extroversion, when it comes to measuring your extroversion on the personality test scale, it's going to give you a number. So like on the scale of 100, say you're 98. That's where I lie. So if I get a
What's
98 on a
the
personality test,
upper limit?
so there's basically a percentile, right? So 98th
All right,
percentile.
all
So
right.
98th percentile means that if I'm in a room of 100 people on average,
Mm-hmm.
I am the second most extroverted individual in the room.
All right.
And there's a possibility of me being the first, and there's also there's a possibility that there might be someone that's more extroverted than I am. So this is a very extreme case for extroversion,
Mm-hmm.
right? Similarly, there's like the same scale for introversion as well, and there are people that like if they're 50% or 55% extrovert, then they're a very balanced individual, that they can thrive in extroverted scenarios and introversion scenarios. Now, the reason why I'd like to talk about extroversion and introversion is that
Mm-hmm.
like in layman language and the generic sense, introversion को ना like लोगों ने इतना बकवास बना दिया है. When I say bakwas, what they've done is anyone that has an inability to communicate has been equated with introversion
That's
in
not true, right?
society.
That's not true.
That is not true in scientific sense,
Mm-hmm.
but what they do is, okay, ये बंदा shy है, ये बंदा बोल नहीं सकता, अरे ये introvert है, इसलिए नहीं बोल पा रहा. Introversion has nothing to do with your ability to communicate. So like I whenever we're having this conversation, I try to get that message across, that dude, that is not introversion. What you're talking about, that is something else. Please stop using scientific terms as generic terms and just completely revamping and changing the entire meaning. Because again, what happens is, if you say something in a very convincing tone,
Mm-hmm.
which is your opinion, you present it as facts, most people are going to accept it. They're not going to fact check you.
It's a big
That's
lie
what it is.
fallacy.
Exactly, dude. Like that's exactly what happens everywhere. So like the extroversion, introversion myth, all that stuff. That being extroverted is better, being introverted is better, or being introverted is worse. Like that's the usual, um,
Mm-hmm.
like that's the usual narrative, that being introvert is bad. But being introvert is not bad, man.
Agreed,
Like you
agreed.
just need to change different careers. It's completely healthy to be an introvert introverted
Or just
individual
like
as it
careers,
is.
does it really affect careers, like being an introvert, extrovert? Will it affect any
Uh,
careers?
yeah, it will definitely affect your career, man. For example, I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
So for example, I'll give you an example. Wow, 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 nice, nice. Yeah,
You
but
dropped
anyway,
down to
the
my
point.
grammar scale. All right.
Yeah, dude. Let's go. Okay,
Cool, cool.
so the point that I'm trying to get at here is you would not be the best salesman if you are an introverted individual.
All right.
It's not that you can't communicate excellently, it's that you just will not feel the most energetic when you're selling for 4 or 5 hours. So the main core difference with extroversion and introverted individuals is extroverted individuals feel more at home when they are at a party or amongst individuals, and introverted individuals, they need their me time to recharge. So to give you a perspective, an extroverted individual starts in a gathering, an introverted individual starts in a gathering. Extroverted individual has a reverse battery. The more they're in a gathering surrounded by people, the more their battery recharges. While the introverted individual is reverse. The more they are in the gathering, the more they lose their battery and they have to recharge it by spending some alone time. And that's the only main difference. Every
All
other
right.
thing, that like high on energy, high on communication, high on whatever, shy, not shy, being life of the party and whatnot, all those things, they're individualistic personality traits. But the main difference between extroversion and introversion is that like the more you spend time around people, as an extroverted individual, you're going to feel better,
Cool.
while as an
Like how
introverted
does someone
individual,
change,
you're
dude?
not.
How does someone change from being an extrovert to being an introvert, or vice versa?
Why do you have to change it? I think you can't change it because it's a part of your personality, and it's a very very definitive part of your personality, right? For example, to give you
Mm-hmm.
how definitive this is, so Myers-Briggs I've already given you, right? So like extroversion, introversion, intuitive, sensitive, thinking, feeling, and perceiving, judging, all these 8 variables, they constitute Myers-Briggs, and you get 16 different personalities. The other personality that I was talking about is Big Five. Big Five is, the abbreviation for that is ocean, which is O represents openness, C represents conscientiousness, E represents extroversion.
Yep.
So extroversion and introversion is a topic of choice in deciding and determining and also categorizing an individual's personality. And that's consistent across multiple personality tests. So extroversion and introversion is like a legit thing.
All
So
right.
why would you want to change it? Like you can still be an amazing communicator as an introverted individual. Like nobody's stopping you. But if you want to pick a career, don't pick sales as a career, because an extroverted individual is always going to outperform you purely on the basis of them having more energy 5 hours into it.
Okay, right. It's more convincing too, right? When someone is like, "Hey," and someone is like, "Hey," so it's more convincing in that
Yeah,
part as well.
exactly. So yeah, that's why
And
like I'll give you an example. For example, in Avalon Discord right now, most of the people that are thriving are also extroverts, if you can tell.
yep, got yeah, yeah. I've
because
seen.
because like it's easier to like just put yourself out there.
Agreed, agreed.
So it is what it is.
What about ambiversion? Is that like a term, or it's just made up? Because I feel it's made up. Because how can someone be exactly in the middle?
I think ambiversion is more of an acquired trait. Okay, and when I call it an acquired trait, for example, I am someone that's super extroverted, but I also have very introverted tendencies. But again, like if I really give you logic to my introverted tendencies, is I don't like to talk to people that don't have the kind of vibe and the kind of level of thought that I have. So I'd rather be alone, like legit. I'd rather be alone than to have people around me that like I don't vibe with. So because of that, I had to spend a lot of years by myself, and like I have developed
Mm,
introverted tendencies as well. But other than that, I think ambiversion is like it's really like an extroverted individual learning how to be alone, and an introverted individual learning how to be amongst people. So I think like it's one of those things that's like a legit thing that you learn over the
mm-hmm.
course of years through experience. Because if you are an introverted individual, right, you are in an environment where you are surrounded by people all the time, you don't have your me time,
Yep.
right? You're going to have a hard time initially for 6 months, 1 year, maybe a year and a half. But when you're consistently putting yourself out there and you just can't avoid that surrounding is going to create an impact on your personality over the course of time. and
Mm-hmm.
that personality is going to get, like, so the impact that you would have on day one versus a year and a half later is going to be radically different, right? And it's
Right.
because you're, like, adapting, because like that's what we do, humans adapt.
How does body language affect introversion, extroversion?
Oh, okay. So body language does not necessarily affect introversion, extroversion, but it does affect how you feel in the moment and how, like, so body. There's
Mm-hmm.
conclusive research. It's done by Amy Cuddy. A lot of people call her that, like that pseudoscience and whatnot, but she gave a very fascinating TED talk on how
Mm-hmm.
body language can influence your mental state. I even made a video on my YouTube channel about this using her TED talk as a reference and her case study as a reference, wherein, like, if you are basically, so the entire idea
Mm-hmm.
is when you are an alpha individual, okay, like the word here is like very cheeky, but yeah, when you're
Yeah.
an alpha individual, when you're high on the dominance hierarchy, what happens is you become more expansive in nature, and that's a byproduct of natural selection, and
Define
that's
expansive.
consistent. So when I say expansive, like you're basically just taking more space in the room. You're, like you're
All
standing
right.
with your feet apart. You're, like you're probably using, like dominant hand gestures, dominating, like, to give you an
Got it.
example,
Got it.
putting your hands on your waist is a symbolic dominating theory. Like if you're visiting your boss, if your boss puts the feet on the table and like puts his hand behind his shoulder, behind his head, is also like a sign of dominance. So, like, to give you an example, it's also very common in the animal world, right?
Yeah.
Whenever individuals are trying to dominate, they basically become more expansive, and when people are submitting, they become more contract, like they contract to submit, right?
Yep.
To the most realist thing where, like you can probably witness this is just witness what happens when the, like the street dogs fight in your neighborhood next time. There's going to be a clear expansive dog that's growling or whatever, and there's going to be a clear head down contractive dogs trying to submit that, hey, I'm not a threat to you, I'm not a threat to you, because that's
Exactly.
exactly what the contraction symbolizes, that hey, I'm not a threat, so let it be. So the
You
point
know, it is one
of
of the
Amy
only
Cuddy's,
things. It is one of the only things which works in interspecies. If, for example, you're in front of, for example, say this happened. This has happened a lot of times, right? If you're in front of a dog which is trying to attack you, if you just submit in front of him, like it's a niche bet case, something. I don't know what that position is called, but just like kneel down and put your head down. Dog feels like you're just submitting to him. The dog leaves. On the other hand, if you just try to put your hands wide apart, and dog might have two options, like either to attack you or he'll just run away. It's one of the only things which work interspecies. Do you know any other body language gestures which works interspecies?
I think, see, I won't say that there are body language gestures that work interspecies, but in general, I think monkeys try to mimic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like we have ancestral connection with monkeys like today. I think, like monkeys, they basically replicate, right? So if you wave at them, there's a chance that monkeys are going to wave back at you if they're friendly or they're trying to interact with you. Same thing goes with, like bears. Like I've seen funny videos on the internet where, like people are waving at the bear and the bear just waves back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more of a individual, like an individual animal trying to do something thing, than it is that, like like human and animals trying to interact. Because like, again, like I genuinely don't know if that's the case. Like you'll probably need to talk to a zoologist for that, because like I've never thought about, like what can I do to get an
Exactly.
animal respond back to me. But yeah, dude, like, so Amy Cuddy's research, like whatever she was talking about is how, like, so
Mm-hmm.
how when you are an alpha, you become more expansive, right?
Yep.
Is the reverse also true? So if you basically try to be expansive, is that going to put you in a mental state that's equivalent of, like someone that's, like not feeling threatened and like feeling really confident? So
All right.
like a lot of people call it a placebo, but I genuinely think it works. And to give you an example, anyone that's
Mm-hmm.
listening to us right now, let's try this, okay?
Cool.
Stand up on your feet, right? Just extend your arms in the air as much as you can, and then just
Mm-hmm.
clench your fists and try to imagine a crowd cheering for you because you won something.
All right.
You
All
do
right.
that for 10 seconds, you're going to feel it. You're legit going to feel it. Like Like it is something that happens. If it's a placebo, if it's not a placebo, it's still up to like discussion, because like there are scientists that disagree with this, there are scientists that agree with it. So yeah, but
It's
I
almost
think,
like a combination, right, of conditioning as well, because you're trying to think that over and over again, or like not think that over, but just imagine that probably that situation.
oh
What do
no,
you
so
think?
I gave you a very specific example to help you realize what I'm talking about. But in general, when you are expansive, it's more of subliminal conditioning and not active conditioning.
All right, define sub what was that called? Subliminal conditioning and active conditioning.
So active conditioning is when you're trying to like actively influence your mental state using your body language. For example, the example that we just gave, that stand up, expand yourself, like raise your arms and like try to imagine that like people are cheering for you. That's
Mm-hmm.
actively you trying to change your mental state. But a lot of things that happen are very subliminal. When I say subliminal, means that like most of the time, so like when you are in a crowd, no,
Mm-hmm.
next time, just observe people's body language, man. Like confident individuals, they are like, you don't even have to talk to someone to tell if the person that you're going to talk to is confident or not. You can tell by the clothes they wear, you can tell by how they carry themselves, you can tell how comfortable they are in a particular situation, how smiley they are, how they're using their hand gestures,
Mm-hmm.
how smooth, like you'll be able to observe, man. Like just
Yeah,
like
I
in
agree
a
with all those
gathering next
points,
time.
but I'm not sure about the clothes they wear. Like, do colors affect that, or the presentation, or whatever?
Dude, I'm yet to see people that are confident or amazing just like make a fool out of themselves with their stupid clothing.
All right, that
that's
means
that that's
like
the that's
mismatch
the
in
idea.
colors.
Yeah, like, so I know there are a lot of people that don't want to dress up, but there's like also dress up cases when they're just like borderline disasters, right? So like I'm yet to meet a person that's smart and is also like a fashion disaster. They may not be the most fashionable person out there, but they're not going to be a fashion disaster unless you're Tim Ferriss, who's trying to like do things that like Marcus Aurelius talks about and whatnot.
Mm. All right, all right. I believe it's more about comfort, right? Because if you check, who's the most, I forgot his name, like Ranveer Singh, right? Because he's too extroverted, and he wears like, I don't know what to say,
Dude,
like
that's
insane
his
stuff.
that's his brand selling point. That's his mo. He's doing all of that for attention, because the more quirky his outfit, the more attention and the more media coverage he's going to get. So he's building a brand. That's a brand tactic.
But like, what person would like to wear such things, right? But like, why? Just for the attention, I
Dude,
get it. But like, if he wants to sell
dude,
something with that,
what are you talking about? What are you talking? Dude, there are
hmm
guys that put t-shirts on themselves for attention, just to like pretend to have like long hair because they're pretending to be women, all that stuff. It's for attention, right? So like Ranveer wearing all those clothes, it's for attention, because attention in 21st century can be
hmm
cashed.
all right, all right, got it, got it. Cool. So now let's move on to the next topic, which is advice. What's your take on people giving random advice to people on Instagram, or whatever social
I
platform?
hate
Same.
it. I this Dude, मैं मजाक नहीं कर रहा. I'm going to like back up a little because my voice is going to get really loud now because मैं भसड़ वाली चीज से आ रहा हूँ. Dude,
All
I
right, all right.
borderline just like cringe hai yaar. Like everybody's just trying
Exactly.
to give bro advice out there. Like dude, like they have their shit together, and like everything in their life is completely sorted, and they just like want to be like, अरे bro, मैं तेरे को बताता हूँ, मैं तेरे को सब कुछ बता दूंगा. Like most people out there, when it comes to helping and giving advice, no, they are those skinny dudes that haven't hit a day
Yep.
in gym, and they're teaching someone how to like build a six pack abs and like Arnold Schwarzenegger like body.
Exactly.
Like
Like
that's
strong.
legit the idea out there, man. And like the fact that people don't even try to acknowledge the fact that they don't know shit is just borderline crazy, man. Like why can't you accept that you don't know something and then say that, okay, I don't know this, and I'm going to know this later, and
Mm-hmm.
then I will give you an answer. I just don't understand why people try to pretend that they know everything. You're not fucking Google, dude. You can't possibly know everything.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you know, you say you know it. like converse in a way that's like convincing, and you should know your shit ideally. And if you don't know your shit, then just say you don't know it, man. People are
Agreed.
not going to hate on you because they don't know shit. And all of this stems from like, I think, from a lack of confidence, because like people have to, like, people feel the need to pretend to know a lot
Mm-hmm.
because they just don't feel
Agreed.
confident enough to like not know it, like, or present in front of
Mm-hmm.
people as someone that doesn't know something, because like they deeply associate that okay, if I say that I don't know something, people are going to judge me. And the fact that
Agreed.
they're feeling like that, oh, I don't want to be judged, is probably because of a lack of self-esteem or lack of confidence. See, exactly, right? So I genuinely think that the need for people to admit they know everything comes from a lack of
Mm-hmm.
confidence that most people lack.
Agreed.
That they can just put in front of them, put them in front of an audience and say that, hey, I don't know something, and then also be judged and not feel judged at the same time.
Exactly. And what I feel
Yeah.
is like advice is very circumstantial. What might have worked for them, as they're saying, might not even work for everyone they're catering to, right? Because everything is very circumstantial. For example, they're just saying like how to learn coding and giving like random advice कि रात को करो रात को पढ़ो ये करो refer to this website. But everyone has a different learning capability. Just recommending one specific course can't help, right? That's what I feel is wrong about giving advice. All right, well, like sort of at the end of the podcast, like I want to tell you, like for example, let's say someone wants to start with his own research firm. How should you do it?
Okay,
Let's
so
start with
if
that
you want
answer
to if
again.
you want to if you want to start your independent research firm, right? If you want to branch out into independent research,
Mm-hmm.
okay, first of all, get ready for ridicule from a lot of academicians, because most people are not going to listen to you, especially if you look like a 17-year-old. Second, it's very important for you to have the capacity of reading and consuming information, because you will really need to be thoroughly researching what's already been found. Because if you're trying to find something that's already been found and you're wasting time on something that's already been found, you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
wasting your time, right? So have the capacity to read and process a lot of information. Again, I will ideally say that you should also have the ability to communicate precisely whatever you're building, because your communication as an independent researcher makes a huge difference of whether or not your research will be taken seriously,
Agreed.
right? So like these two things are a must. And then like obviously have, like, be smart, dude. Like you
All
should
right.
know whether or not you're cut out for something or not, because just because you want to be an independent researcher and just because it sounds cool, don't try to branch out into it, because trust me, it looks very fancy and it sounds very fancy when call myself an independent researcher. I know the kind of like the kind of looks I get when I'm like trying to like get in front of an academician, and just because like I look too young and I sound very controversial to like how things are being done. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a very tough battle. So don't pick this career if you just want to like sound cool, because it's not too much money unless you like really prove your research and you have a working model. And
Yep.
like it's like really difficult. So yeah.
All right. It's been great talking to you, Chaitanya. I'm sure it's likewise. All right, guys, follow Chaitanya on all the social media handles. I'll link them down in the description. So yeah, if you like this podcast, do the formalities, and until the next episode, bye bye.